Hi everyone, this is Mrs. Caveney, and today we are going to start a new module. The module is called Stories, and in our Stories module, we're going to hear a bunch of fiction stories that are made up. In most of our stories, it's going to have a character who the story is mostly about, also known as the main character. And characters in our stories will be people or animals, but for the most part, they are going to be animals that can talk. So right away, you know that it's going to be a fiction story. So we're going to start by hearing the story of Chicken Little, and I want you to listen carefully to find out what silly mistake Chicken Little made and why it makes her scared. So let's get started with Chicken Little. Here she is. One fine morning, Chicken Little went out to the woods. As she walked along, an acorn fell on her head. Chicken Little was a silly little chicken, and she often made silly mistakes. Chicken Little thought the acorn was part of the sky. Chicken Little was so caught by surprise that she worked herself into a tizzy. "Oh, dear me," she cried, "the sky is falling. I must go and tell the king." On her way to see the king, Chicken Little met Henny Penny. "Henny Penny, the sky is falling," cried Chicken Little. "How do you know?" asked Henny Penny. "A piece of it fell on my poor head," said Chicken Little, rubbing her poor little noggin with the memory of it. "Then let us go and tell the king," said Henny Penny, who now felt quite worried as well. So Henny Penny and Chicken Little ran along until they met Goosey Lucy. "Goosey Lucy, the sky is falling," cried Henny Penny. "How do you know?" asked Goosey Lucy. "A piece of it fell on my poor head," said Chicken Little. Goosey Lucy looked at Henny Penny, who nodded in agreement. "Then let us go and tell the king," said Goosey Lucy, who could not help but believe her friends. So Goosey Lucy, Henny Penny, and Chicken Little hurried along until they met Ducky Lucky. "Ducky Lucky, the sky is falling," cried Goosey Lucy. "How do you know?" asked Ducky Lucky. "A piece of it fell on my poor head," said Chicken Little. Henny Penny and Goosey Lucy stood nodding their heads wide-eyed next to Chicken Little. Ducky Lucky looked at her three friends and became worried because they were so worried. "Then let us go and tell the king," said Ducky Lucky. So Ducky Lucky, Goosey Lucy, Henny Penny, and Chicken Little ran along until they met Turkey Lurkey, who was certainly the biggest of the birds. "Turkey Lurkey, the sky is falling," cried Ducky Lucky. "How do you know?" asked Turkey Lurkey. "A piece of it fell on my poor head," said Chicken Little. Henny Penny, Goosey Lucy, and Ducky Lucky stood behind Chicken Little, flapping their wings with worry. "Then let us go and tell the king," said Turkey Lurkey, for who was he to disagree with his four scared friends? So the five feathered friends ran along until they met Foxy Loxy. Look at his teeth. "Foxy Loxy, the sky is falling," cried Turkey Lurkey. "Oh, is that so?" said sly Foxy Loxy, who knew better, but pretended to believe the five trembling birds. "If the sky is falling, you'd better keep safe in my den, and I will go and tell the king for you." So Chicken Little, Henny Penny, Goosey Lucy, Ducky Lucky, and Turkey Lurkey followed Foxy Loxy into his den. The dust in the den made the Chicken Little sneeze. Achoo! The force of the sneeze made Chicken Little come back to her senses. "Wait!" cried Chicken Little. "Birds are supposed to stay away from foxes." Henny Penny, Goosey Lucy, Ducky Lucky, and Turkey Lurkey looked at each other in amazement. "You're right!" they cried. And so the five feather friends ran out of the cave and never went back there again. And from that day on, they thought very carefully before believing that the sky was falling again. That's the end of our first story, Chicken Little. So now let's think about some questions. Our first question to think about is, who was the main character in the story? The main character in the story was Chicken Little. Our next question is, did a piece of the sky really fall on Chicken Little's head? No, a piece of the sky did not fall on Chicken Little's head. Our next question is, what fell on Chicken Little's head? That one's tricky. You have to remember all the way back to the first part of our story. An acorn fell on Chicken Little's head. And our last question to think about is, did Foxy Loxy believe that the sky was falling? No, Foxy Loxy didn't believe that the sky was falling, but he did believe that he could trick those birds into going into his den. And then what do you think he was going to do with them if they stayed in there? That sly fox. Okay, now you're going to think about a question to write about. So here's my writing started over here. So what I want you to do is illustrate and write what animal you think the king is. So in our story, they kept saying, we must go tell the king, but they didn't say what type of animal or who the king was. So I want you to start your sentence like this. I think the king is, and fill in the blank. Don't forget your capital at the beginning and your period at the end. And if you look at my picture, I drew the setting. They were outside. Here's the barn. It's sunny. And then I started, I think the king is I didn't finish because I want you to come up with an idea. But if you look at my picture, I think you might know what I thought the king might be. Good job. I can't wait to see all of your writing. Thanks for listening.